Hello, my name is Emily Damon, and I'm a graduate research assistant at the Institute for Economic Racial Equity at Brandeis University, working on the Empowerment Economics team. Last summer, my colleague Yushi Wang and I met with funders from across the country to discuss how philanthropy is responding to racial and economic inequities that existed well before COVID, but that were exacerbated throughout the pandemic. We also discussed how empowerment economics can act as a catalyst to shift funding practices and enhance wealth and power building for Indigenous, Black, and other communities of color. Through these conversations, we found that the empowerment economics framework can help funders think critically about philanthropy and work toward more participatory and trust-based funding models. Empowerment economics is a multi-generational, culturally responsive approach to building wealth and power. It was developed by and for low-income Asian American and Pacific Islander communities and other communities of color. It is a collaborative research partnership between National Capacity, Hawaiian Community Assets, and the Institute for Economic and Racial Equity. The core elements of empowerment economics are made up of 6 components. Empowerment economics is community-driven, culturally connected, narrative-changing work that is holistic, multi-generational, and designed to build wealth and power within communities. From the interviews with funders, we found that funders are engaged in this work in a variety of ways and that there is still more work to be done. We found that empowerment economics can help facilitate discussions around more equitable distribution of wealth between funders and community leaders. Currently, funders are focused on impact at the individual level and are currently trying to shift this impact to include families, communities, and systemic levels as well. The conversation around equitable funding practices is not new, and Indigenous, Black, and other communities of color have led the call for a redistribution of wealth and power to communities. By embedding empowerment economics into philanthropy, the sector can become more equitable, and funders at any stage in the process can shift philanthropy toward a more equitable and just system. Through this research and our empowerment economics work, we have helped to catalyze and create momentum for a locally grounded, critically reflective space in which funders and community-based organizations can discuss and identify strategies for grounding their work in racial and economic justice. Specifically, this coalition building model has taken root in Portland, Oregon, with the Oregon Economic Justice Roundtable. There was already momentum taking shape when neighborhood partnerships invited empowerment economics researchers to facilitate and contribute to existing yet siloed conversations. Local funders and organizations were already seeing connections between racial and economic justice, and they were recognizing the importance of culturally informed and locally grounded approaches. The process and outcomes of the roundtable proceedings show a promising model, a model for how to start local engagement by identifying where the conversation already is. A model for how to center power dynamics in facilitating transformative relationships. And finally, a model on how to move these very important conversations to collective action. Through this work, the Oregon Economic Justice Roundtable is moving to shift funding practices and redistribute wealth to communities of color. As funders reevaluate their funding practices, we developed 3 recommendations for the philanthropic sector. 1, remove silos by creating spaces for funders to collaborate and share challenges directly related to shifting power and wealth dynamics. 2nd, engage grant makers and community-based organizations in shared spaces, just like the one the Oregon Economic Justice Roundtable is doing, and build more trust-based philanthropy in the process. 3rd, engage top-level decision makers and senior leaders and foundations. These findings and recommendations highlight the importance of collective work in making systemic, equitable, and just changes in our society. And the Oregon Economic Justice Roundtable is an example of how funders and organizations can work together in these spaces. Thank you so much. We look forward to speaking with you further about our work at the conference.